Throughout history, men have crossed oceans, fought wars, betrayed kingdoms, and murdered their closest friends in pursuit of unimaginable wealth. Gold has built empires, but some treasures appear to demand something far more valuable in return. Across centuries, explorers, archaeologists, kings, pirates, and ordinary people have all reported the same terrifying pattern. They found the treasure, then tragedy followed. Tonight on Black 13, we investigate 6 of history's most infamous cursed treasures. Are these merely coincidences born from greed, or have some objects carried a darkness that refuses to let go? Some treasures glitter with beauty, others seem to cast a shadow that stretches across centuries. Few objects in history have inspired more fascination, fear, and whispered superstition than the Hope Diamond. Today it rests behind thick glass under constant security, admired by millions as one of the world's most extraordinary gemstones. But long before it became a museum centerpiece, stories followed it across continents. Stories of kings who lost their crowns, fortunes that vanished overnight, and owners whose lives ended in tragedy. Coincidence or curse? That question has haunted the diamond for hundreds of years, and the deeper you follow its history, the more unsettling the pattern appears. The story begins in 17th century India, where legend claims the deep blue diamond was removed from the eye of a sacred temple statue dedicated to a Hindu deity. According to the popular tale, the theft awakened a terrible curse upon anyone who possessed the stone. Historians caution that there is no reliable evidence this temple theft actually occurred, and the story likely emerged long after the diamond reached Europe. Yet, like many enduring legends, the tale became inseparable from the jewel itself. Imagine holding a gemstone said to have watched over a sacred shrine for centuries. If someone warned you it carried a curse, would you dismiss the story? Or would a small part of you wonder whether some objects are better left undisturbed? The earliest well-documented owner was the French gem merchant Jean-Baptiste Tavernier, who acquired the remarkable blue diamond during his travels through India in the 1600s. From there, the stone eventually entered the court of King Louis XIV of France, where it was recut into a magnificent royal jewel known as the French blue. Within the glittering halls of Versailles, the diamond became a symbol of unimaginable wealth and absolute power. But history has a way of reminding even the mightiest rulers that fortunes can change. As France drifted toward revolution, the royal family that proudly displayed the gem would meet a fate that became one of history's most infamous tragedies. During the French Revolution, the royal treasury was looted, and the French blue disappeared into chaos. King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette were executed, and although there is no evidence that the diamond caused their downfall, later generations eagerly connected the jewel to the family's grim fate. It was the beginning of a pattern that would repeat again and again. Every misfortune suffered by an owner became another thread woven into the growing legend. Was history simply selecting tragedies that fit the narrative while ignoring countless ordinary years? Or was something about the diamond encouraging people to see meaning in every disaster that followed it? Decades later, a slightly smaller blue diamond surfaced in London. Many experts believe it had been recut to disguise its identity after the French theft. Eventually, it came into the possession of wealthy collector Henry Philip Hope, whose family name would forever become attached to the gemstone. Yet the Hope family's financial fortunes gradually declined over succeeding generations. The diamond changed hands repeatedly as debts mounted and estates were sold. Again, believers pointed to the curse. Skeptics pointed to poor financial decisions and changing economic conditions. But once a legend takes hold, every coincidence becomes another piece of evidence. How many unfortunate events must surround an object before people stop calling them coincidences? By the early 20th century, the Hope Diamond crossed the Atlantic into the hands of American socialite Evelyn Walsh McLean. She adored the gem and often wore it to lavish parties, believing she could somehow outwit the curse. Yet during her ownership, her life was marked by profound personal hardships, including family tragedies and financial struggles. Historians do not attribute these events to the diamond itself, but newspapers eagerly embrace the narrative of a cursed jewel bringing sorrow to another owner. The story sold papers, captured imaginations, and transformed the Hope Diamond into one of the world's most famous supernatural legends. The truth, however, may be even more fascinating than the myth. Psychologists describe a phenomenon known as confirmation bias, the tendency to notice events that support an existing belief while overlooking those that do not. Thousands of people encountered or handled the Hope Diamond throughout its history without experiencing extraordinary misfortune. Museum curators, gemologists, security staff, and countless visitors have all come into contact with the jewel safely. Yet the dramatic stories endure because they are unforgettable. Fear has always been a more powerful storyteller than ordinary life. Does the diamond possess a curse, or have generations of people unconsciously helped create one through the stories they chose to remember? Today, the Hope Diamond resides safely within the Smithsonian Institution, protected by advanced security and admired by millions every year. Visitors often stand silently before the shimmering blue stone, reading the legends while gazing into its remarkable depths. Some smile at the old tales, others linger a little longer than expected, unable to shake the strange feeling that they are looking at more than a gemstone. Perhaps that reaction is the Hope Diamond's greatest mystery. Whether cursed or not, it has become something few objects ever achieve, a treasure capable of making people question the line between history and superstition. As the lights of the museum reflect across its brilliant blue surface, one final question remains. Did the Hope Diamond truly carry misfortune across continents and centuries, claiming kings, fortunes, and families in its wake? Or has humanity done what it has always done, wrapped an extraordinary object in extraordinary stories until the legend became more powerful than the truth itself? Whatever the answer may be, one fact cannot be denied. For more than 300 years, people have continued to fear, admire, and covet the same glittering stone. And perhaps the greatest curse of all is not that it brings tragedy, but that no one who gazes upon it can ever completely look away. Few discoveries in human history have captured the world's imagination like the opening of an ancient Egyptian tomb sealed for more than 3,000 years. For centuries, the Valley of the Kings lay beneath the relentless desert sun, hiding the forgotten rulers of one of history's greatest civilizations. Sand buried entrances, time erased names, entire dynasties faded into legend. Yet among those silent tombs rested one remarkable secret. The nearly intact burial chamber of a young pharaoh named Tutankhamun. When archaeologists finally uncovered it in 1922, they believed they had discovered history's greatest treasure. Instead, many people came to believe they had awakened something that had been sleeping beneath the desert for millennia. British archaeologist Howard Carter had spent years searching the Valley of the Kings with the financial support of Lord Carnarvon. Season after season produced disappointment. Many experts believed every important royal tomb had already been found. Funds were nearly exhausted, and the expedition stood on the brink of failure. Then, in November 1922, workers uncovered a stone staircase disappearing beneath the sand. Each step revealed another piece of history untouched since the age of the pharaohs. Imagine standing before a sealed doorway, bearing the cartouches of an ancient king, knowing that no living person had crossed that threshold for more than 30 centuries. Would curiosity outweigh caution? Or would you hesitate, wondering why the tomb had remained undisturbed for so long? When Carter finally peered through a small opening into the burial chambers, he later described seeing wonderful things. Gold glittered in the darkness. Intricately carved statues stood silently where ancient priests had left them. Chariots, ceremonial furniture, weapons, jewelry, and sacred objects filled chamber after chamber. Unlike many royal tombs that had been looted centuries earlier, Tutankhamun's resting place remained astonishingly intact. It was one of archaeology's greatest triumphs. Yet while the world celebrated the discovery, whispers of an ancient curse were already beginning to spread. Could disturbing the resting place of a pharaoh carry consequences beyond ordinary understanding? The legend gained momentum only months later when Lord Carnarvon died after suffering complications from an infected mosquito bite. Newspapers around the world seized upon the coincidence. Sensational headlines proclaimed that the curse of the pharaoh had claimed its first victim. Stories circulated that the lights in Cairo mysteriously went out at the exact moment of his death, while others claimed his dog in England howled before collapsing. Many of these dramatic details remain difficult to verify and likely grew through repeated retelling, yet they became inseparable from the legend. Was this simply a tragic medical complication, or had the world's imagination already begun transforming coincidence into supernatural certainty? As the years passed, additional deaths among individuals connected, sometimes only loosely, to the excavation were added to the growing list of alleged victims. Every illness, accident, or unexpected passing became another chapter in the story. Yet, when historians examined the evidence more closely, a different picture emerged. Many people who entered the tomb lived long and productive lives. Howard Carter himself, often cited as proof against the curse, survived for nearly 17 years after opening the tomb and died of natural causes at the age of 64. Numerous archaeologists, laborers, photographers, and Egyptian officials involved in the excavation experienced no unusual misfortune. Why then did the legend continue growing despite evidence that contradicted it? Part of the answer lies in the extraordinary atmosphere surrounding ancient Egypt itself. Tombs were never intended to be opened. They were sacred spaces prepared with immense care to protect a ruler throughout eternity. Ancient inscriptions occasionally warned against disturbing burial sites, though no authenticated inscription threatening a curse was found at Tutankhamun's tomb itself. Still, the symbolism was powerful. Imagine walking through narrow stone corridors illuminated only by flickering lanterns, surrounded by funerary statues whose painted eyes seemed to follow every movement. Even the most skeptical visitor might feel an overwhelming sense that they had entered a place where they did not belong. Modern science has proposed more practical explanations for the curse legend. Some researchers have suggested that sealed tombs could contain mold spores, bacteria, or airborne fungi capable of affecting vulnerable individuals, although no evidence demonstrates that such factors cause the specific deaths associated with Tutankhamun's tomb. Others point to simple probability. Large archaeological expeditions involve many people over many years, making it statistically inevitable that some participants will experience illness or death. Yet statistics rarely capture the imagination the way an ancient curse can. Which story would you remember more vividly? A medical explanation, or the belief that an Egyptian king had reached across 3,000 years to defend his eternal resting place? Today, Tutankhamun's tomb remains one of humanity's greatest archaeological discoveries, while the legend of the pharaoh's curse continues to fascinate audiences around the world. It reminds us that history is often shaped as much by storytelling as by facts. The glittering gold mask, the sealed chambers, the sudden death of Lord Carnarvon, and the atmosphere of sacred mystery combine to create one of the 20th century's most enduring legends. Whether the curse existed only in the minds of those who feared it or represented something no science can fully explain is a question that each generation continues to ask. As evening falls over the Valley of the Kings, the desert grows silent once more. Beneath those ancient cliffs, countless tombs still remain hidden, guarding secrets that have survived empires, invasions, and the passage of time itself. Perhaps Tutankhamun's greatest legacy is not the treasure uncovered within his burial chamber, but the question left behind for all who hear his story. Are some places meant to remain untouched forever? And if humanity continues searching for the riches of the past, how many ancient doors are still waiting to be opened, with consequences we cannot yet imagine? There are places on Earth that seem to resist every attempt to uncover their secrets. No matter how much money is spent, how many experts are assembled, or how advanced the technology becomes, they refuse to surrender what lies beneath. Oak Island, a small, heavily wooded island off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, is one of those places. For more than 2 centuries, it has lured explorers, engineers, fortune hunters, and dreamers with the promise of unimaginable riches. Yet the deeper people dig, the more the island seems to fight back. Some believe it hides one of history's greatest lost treasures. Others believe the island itself is cursed. Whatever the truth may be, Oak Island has claimed fortunes, livelihoods, and lives, while revealing almost nothing in return. The mystery is said to have begun in 1795, when a young man named Daniel McGuinness noticed a curious depression in the ground beneath an old oak tree. According to the traditional story, the clearing showed signs of previous activity, including what appeared to be a block and tackle hanging from a branch. Intrigued, McGuinness and 2 companions began digging. At first, they uncovered only loose soil. Then, several feet down, they reportedly encountered a layer of wooden logs laid with unusual precision. As they dug deeper, more wooden platforms appeared at regular intervals. Someone, it seemed, had intentionally buried something deep beneath the earth. But what required such extraordinary effort to conceal? And who had possessed the knowledge and resources to construct such a remarkable underground shaft? News of the discovery spread quickly, attracting investors convinced they stood on the threshold of unimaginable wealth. Over the following decades, excavation companies returned again and again, each convinced they possessed the equipment or expertise previous searchers lacked. Yet almost every attempt ended the same way. As workers reached greater depths, seawater suddenly flooded the excavation, filling the shaft faster than it could be emptied. Engineers proposed hidden flood tunnels connected to the ocean, while others argued the flooding resulted from natural geological conditions. Whatever the cause, the effect was undeniable. Each time the treasure seemed within reach, the island reclaimed the shaft beneath thousands of gallons of seawater. Was this an ingenious trap designed centuries earlier, or simply nature creating the perfect illusion? As technology improved, so did the ambition of treasure hunters. Massive steam pumps, drilling rigs, explosives, and sophisticated excavation techniques were brought to Oak Island. Yet progress often came at a terrible cost. Collapsing tunnels, unstable ground, and flooding repeatedly turned rescue operations into disasters. Several searchers lost their lives over the years during excavation efforts. These tragedies gave rise to one of the island's most persistent legends, that 7 people must die before the treasure can finally be revealed. There is no historical evidence that this prophecy predates the modern era, and many researchers consider it later folklore. Even so, the legend has become inseparable from Oak Island's story. Why do such prophecies emerge around places that refuse to surrender their secrets? The theories surrounding the island are almost as fascinating as the excavations themselves. Some believe pirate captain William Kidd buried an enormous fortune there before disappearing into history. Others argue the treasure belongs to the Knights Templar, hidden after the Crusades along with priceless religious relics. Still others suggest Shakespearean manuscripts, French royal jewels, Spanish colonial gold, or even the lost Ark of the Covenant. Each theory is supported by intriguing coincidences, historical speculation, or unusual discoveries, but none has been conclusively proven. Every generation arrives convinced it has solved the mystery, only to leave with more questions than answers. The island itself contributes greatly to its eerie reputation. Dense forests muffle sound. Thick fog rolls inland from the Atlantic with little warning, transforming familiar trails into ghostly corridors of grey. Old excavation pits dot the landscape like forgotten graves, while abandoned machinery slowly rusts beneath towering pines. Imagine standing alone on the island after sunset, knowing that beneath your feet lies a labyrinth of flooded shafts, collapsed tunnels, and centuries of failed attempts to uncover whatever may be hidden below. Would you continue digging, or begin wondering whether some secrets survive because they are never meant to be found? Modern investigations have uncovered intriguing artifacts, including old coins, fragments of tools, pieces of parchment, and evidence suggesting human activity long before the earliest documented treasure hunts. These discoveries confirm that something unusual occurred on Oak Island centuries ago, though they stop far short of proving any single treasure theory. Historians and archaeologists remain divided. Some argue that the evidence points to legitimate historical activity, later exaggerated into legend. Others believe the repeated discoveries indicate there is still something significant buried beneath the island. The mystery remains compelling precisely because no explanation accounts for every piece of evidence. Today, Oak Island continues to attract researchers, engineers, and treasure hunters from around the world. Millions have watched modern expeditions employ cutting-edge technology in hopes of solving a mystery that has endured for more than 200 years. Yet despite all the drilling, mapping, and excavation, the central question remains unanswered. Has humanity spent generations chasing a legend born from hopeful imagination? Or does one final chamber still lie hidden beneath the island, patiently waiting for the right person to uncover it? As the Atlantic waves crash against Oak Island's rocky shoreline and evening mist drifts through the trees, the island keeps its silence. It has watched empires rise and fall, swallowed fortunes invested by determined treasure hunters, and outlasted every confident prediction that its mystery would soon be solved. Somewhere beneath layers of earth, flooded tunnels, and forgotten engineering may lie nothing at all, or perhaps one of history's greatest undiscovered treasures. Until someone can prove otherwise, Oak Island remains one of the world's most haunting enigmas, a place where hope has always been buried deeper than gold, and where the greatest treasure may be the mystery itself. Throughout history, countless treasures have vanished during war, only to reappear years or even centuries later. But few disappearances have inspired as much obsession as that of the Amber Room. Once described as the eighth wonder of the world, it was not simply a room. It was a masterpiece built from glowing amber panels, gold leaf, mirrors, and priceless craftsmanship that seemed almost supernatural when illuminated by candlelight. Today, no one can say with certainty where it rests. Some believe it was destroyed forever. Others insist it remains hidden in an underground vault, waiting to be rediscovered. And over the decades, that belief has driven people into abandoned mines, forgotten bunkers, and dangerous ruins, sometimes with deadly consequences. The Amber Room was originally created in the early 18th century for the Kingdom of Prussia, before eventually being presented as a diplomatic gift to Peter the Great of Russia. Installed within the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg, it became one of the most breathtaking rooms ever constructed. Walls shimmered with thousands of carefully carved amber pieces, glowing like captured sunlight beneath crystal chandeliers. Visitors described entering the chamber as though stepping inside a golden flame. Yet as magnificent as it appeared, the Amber Room's true journey through history had only just begun. Beautiful treasures often become targets during war. But could one room become so valuable that entire armies would hunt for it? Everything changed during the Second World War. In 1941, as Nazi Germany advanced into Soviet territory, German forces reached the Catherine Palace. Museum workers had attempted to protect the fragile amber panels by covering them, but the material had become too brittle to remove safely. The occupying forces dismantled the room piece by piece, carefully packing the priceless artwork into crates before transporting it to Königsberg Castle in East Prussia, where it was publicly displayed once again. For a brief period, the Amber Room survived the chaos of war. Then, almost without warning, it disappeared from history. As Allied bombing intensified and the Eastern Front collapsed, Königsberg descended into destruction. Records became fragmented, convoys vanished, buildings burned. The last confirmed documentation of the Amber Room placed it inside the castle, after which the historical trail grows cold. Some historians believe the room was destroyed during bombing raids or later fires. Others argue that German officials secretly evacuated the crates before the city fell. If that happened, where did they go? Were they loaded onto trains that never reached their destination? Hidden inside mountain tunnels? Buried beneath collapsing bunkers? Every possibility opens another mystery. Over the decades, the search for the Amber Room became one of the greatest treasure hunts in modern history. Explorers descended into abandoned salt mines beneath Germany and Poland. Divers searched the cold waters of the Baltic Sea, investigating sunken cargo ships rumored to have carried priceless Nazi loot. Forgotten railway tunnels were excavated after anonymous tips surfaced, claiming hidden treasure trains lay sealed behind collapsed walls. Every discovery generated international headlines. Every promising lead eventually faded into disappointment. How could one of history's most recognizable works of art simply disappear without leaving behind a single confirmed trace? The mystery has also attracted tragedy. Several treasure hunters, amateur researchers, and explorers have died while investigating dangerous underground sites connected, sometimes only loosely, to Amber Room theories. Collapsing tunnels, unstable wartime bunkers, unexploded ordnance, and abandoned mines have claimed lives over the years. Historians caution that these deaths were not caused by any supernatural force, but by the very real hazards of exploring forgotten wartime locations. Yet to believers in the room's curse, each accident became another chapter in a growing legend. Is it merely coincidence that so many searches have ended in disappointment? Or has the pursuit itself become the true danger? Adding to the fascination are the countless conspiracy theories that refuse to die. Some claim the Amber Room remains hidden beneath a castle in Eastern Europe. Others believe it was secretly transported aboard a ship that now rests somewhere beneath the Baltic Sea. A few suggest Soviet intelligence recovered it decades ago, but kept the discovery hidden for political reasons. None of these theories has been proven, yet each is supported by fragments of testimony, wartime rumors, or unexplained documents that leave just enough uncertainty to keep the legend alive. History often leaves empty spaces, and human imagination has always rushed to fill them. In 2003, Russian craftsmen completed a painstaking reconstruction of the Amber Room, using historical photographs and traditional techniques. Visitors today can once again admire the breathtaking beauty that made the original famous around the world. But despite the remarkable recreation, one question still lingers. Somewhere, perhaps beneath rubble, deep underground, or resting inside an undiscovered vault, could the authentic Amber Room still exist? Or did one of humanity's greatest artistic treasures vanish forever amid the chaos of war? As night settles over the forests, castles, and forgotten bunkers of Eastern Europe, the legend of the Amber Room continues to cast a long shadow. Treasure hunters still follow fading maps. Historians continue examining wartime archives. Explorers descend into places untouched since 1945, hoping that the next sealed chamber or forgotten tunnel will finally reveal history's greatest missing masterpiece. Perhaps the Amber Room was destroyed long ago. Perhaps it waits patiently beneath layers of stone and silence. Until undeniable proof emerges, it remains more than a lost treasure. It is a reminder that some secrets survive not because they are impossible to find, but because history itself refuses to reveal where it buried them. Few names in history inspire images of terror quite like Blackbeard. Long before Hollywood transformed pirates into adventurous rogues, Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard, was a calculated and intimidating captain whose very appearance was designed to strike fear into anyone who crossed his path. Witnesses described him weaving slow-burning fuses into his thick black beard before battle, surrounding his face with smoke until he appeared less like a man and more like something emerging from the fires of hell. Merchant captains often surrendered without firing a shot, convinced that resisting him meant certain death. Yet after his violent end in 1718, one question survived longer than the pirate himself. Where did Blackbeard hide his treasure? Unlike many pirate legends, historians believe Blackbeard amassed significant wealth through years of capturing merchant vessels along the Atlantic coast and throughout the Caribbean. Gold coins, silver, jewels, fine cloth, spices, weapons, and valuable cargo passed through his hands. Yet when Lieutenant Robert Maynard finally defeated Blackbeard in a brutal battle near Ocracoke Island, surprisingly little treasure was recovered. His ship contained supplies and trade goods, but nothing resembling the vast fortune described in countless stories. Had Blackbeard already spent his wealth? Had he distributed it among trusted allies? Or had he concealed it somewhere only he would ever know? Those unanswered questions gave birth to one of America's oldest treasure legends. Along the barrier islands of North Carolina, sailors, fishermen, and settlers began sharing stories of hidden coves where Blackbeard supposedly buried chests filled with gold before returning to sea. Some claimed he marked the locations using strange symbols carved into trees. Others insisted he intentionally created false maps to lure rivals into deadly swamps and shifting sandbars. Every isolated beach, forgotten inlet, and lonely island became a possible hiding place. Imagine standing alone on a deserted shoreline beneath a full moon, shovel in hand, convinced unimaginable riches lay only a few feet below the sand. How long before excitement gave way to the unsettling realization that countless others had searched before you, and none had returned with proof? As decades passed, the legend grew darker. Coastal communities began telling stories that Blackbeard had cursed his treasure so no one else could possess it. According to local folklore, ghostly lights sometimes appeared over isolated marshes where treasure was believed to be buried. Fishermen reported seeing an eerie blue glow dancing across the dunes before vanishing without a trace. Others claimed they heard chains dragging through the surf or caught glimpses of a shadowy figure pacing deserted beaches at night. Historians regard these tales as folklore rather than documented events, but they became woven into the identity of the Outer Banks, a landscape where fog, shifting tides, and lonely coastlines naturally inspire mystery. Perhaps the most famous legend concerns Blackbeard himself. After he was killed, his severed head was displayed from Lieutenant Maynard's ship as proof that the feared pirate was truly dead. Yet local tradition tells a far stranger story. Sailors claimed that Blackbeard's headless body circled Maynard's vessel several times before finally sinking beneath the water. Others believed his restless spirit continued wandering the Carolina coast, eternally searching for the treasure he never revealed. Whether born from frightened imagination or generations of maritime storytelling, the legend transformed Blackbeard from a historical pirate into something approaching a ghostly guardian of his own lost fortune. Treasure hunters have searched for Blackbeard's riches for more than 3 centuries. Expeditions have combed remote islands, excavated forgotten campsites, and explored hidden coves throughout the Carolinas and the Caribbean. Every old map, weathered journal, and anonymous tip has sparked new excitement. Occasionally, explorers uncover colonial coins, cannons, or artifacts from the pirate era, but never the legendary treasure itself. The discovery of Blackbeard's flagship, Queen Anne's Revenge, in 1996 revealed remarkable historical artifacts, yet it offered no evidence of vast buried riches. If the treasure truly existed, why has it remained hidden despite centuries of determined searching? Modern historians suggest a simpler explanation. Pirates rarely buried enormous fortunes in the way popular culture imagines. Wealth often consisted of trade goods that were quickly sold, exchanged, or divided among crews, rather than hidden in secret chests. Blackbeard himself may have preferred spending his profits or investing them through corrupt officials and merchants willing to look the other way. Yet even this practical explanation leaves room for uncertainty. Historical records surrounding piracy are incomplete, and many details of Blackbeard's final months remain unclear. Could one hidden cache still lie beneath shifting coastal sands, overlooked because the legend became larger than the truth? The Outer Banks themselves deepen the mystery. Barrier islands constantly reshape under the force of hurricanes, tides, and erosion. Entire shorelines move over time. Inlets open and close. Forests disappear beneath advancing dunes, while shipwrecks emerge from beaches after powerful storms. If Blackbeard had buried treasure somewhere along this ever-changing coastline, the landscape itself may have erased every recognizable landmark centuries ago. A chest buried beneath a sandy hill in 1718 could now rest beneath the Atlantic Ocean, or beneath a forest that did not yet exist when the pirate walked those shores. As the sun sets over the Carolina coast and mist drifts across the quiet marshes, it is easy to understand why the legend refuses to fade. Somewhere beyond the crashing surf lies the memory of a man who built his reputation on fear, deception, and absolute control over his enemies. Whether Blackbeard's treasure ever existed, as the stories claim, may never be known. But perhaps the greatest treasure he left behind was something far more enduring. A mystery that continues to lure dreamers, historians, and adventurers into the darkness, each believing they might be the one to uncover what 300 years of searching never could. And if they do, one final question remains. Will they discover only forgotten gold, or awaken a legend that was never meant to be disturbed? Not every cursed treasure is a chest overflowing with gold or a jewel fit for a king. Some treasures become cursed because of the obsession they inspire. Across the centuries, explorers have crossed oceans, armies have marched into hostile lands, and ordinary people have gambled their lives chasing fortunes that may never have existed at all. Of every lost treasure in history, few have lured more adventurers into danger than the legendary Treasure of Lima. Said to be worth billions in today's currency, it has remained hidden for more than 200 years. Yet everyone who has claimed they were about to find it has met the same fate: failure, ruin, or mystery. At some point, the question stopped being, "Where is the treasure?" and became, "Why does no one ever return with it?" The legend begins in the early 19th century, during the wars for independence sweeping across South America. As revolutionary forces threatened the Spanish colonial capital of Lima, officials feared that one of the greatest collections of gold, silver, jewels, and sacred religious artifacts in the Americas would fall into enemy hands. According to the most enduring account, the immense fortune was loaded aboard a British merchant ship commanded by Captain William Thompson, who was entrusted with transporting the treasure to safety. Imagine standing on the deck of that vessel, surrounded by hundreds of chests filled with emeralds, gold coins, jeweled crosses, and priceless relics collected over centuries. The temptation would have been almost impossible to ignore. Legend says that somewhere during the voyage, greed overcame duty. Thompson and parts of his crew allegedly murdered the Spanish guards protecting the cargo before steering toward the remote Cocos Island, hundreds of miles off the Pacific coast. There, hidden among dense jungle, volcanic cliffs, and twisting ravines, they were said to have buried the treasure before attempting to escape. Eventually, Spanish authorities captured the crew. Most were reportedly executed. Thompson himself, according to the story, escaped into the jungle with only the secret of the treasure's location. Historians continue to debate portions of this narrative, and surviving documentation is incomplete. Yet one fact remains certain. From that moment forward, Cocos Island became synonymous with unimaginable wealth and endless disappointment. Over the next 2 centuries, hundreds of expeditions descended upon the island. Wealthy businessmen exhausted their fortunes, funding excavations. Military officers organized elaborate searches. Professional treasure hunters mapped caves, surveyed cliffs, and dug countless tunnels through dense rainforest. Every expedition arrived convinced that earlier searchers had overlooked one crucial clue. Every expedition eventually departed empty-handed. Some uncovered old camps, weathered tools, or traces of previous excavations, but the treasure itself remained invisible. How can hundreds of determined searchers fail to uncover even a fraction of such an enormous fortune? Was the treasure ever buried there at all, or had the island become trapped inside its own legend? Cocos Island itself only deepens the mystery. Covered in thick tropical jungle and lashed by relentless Pacific storms, it is one of the most isolated places on Earth. Rain falls in astonishing quantities, constantly reshaping the landscape. Landslides bury old trails. Rivers carve new channels through the mountains. Dense vegetation swallows landmarks within a few short years. Even if Thompson had left behind precise markers, nature may have erased them long ago. Imagine standing alone beneath towering rainforest trees, while mist rolls through the valleys and unfamiliar sounds echo from every direction. Somewhere beneath your feet, legends claim, lies one of history's greatest fortunes. But every step deeper into the jungle carries the unsettling feeling that the island itself wants you to lose your way. As the years passed, stories surrounding the treasure grew darker. Treasure hunters spoke of compasses behaving strangely, violent storms arriving without warning, and an overwhelming sense of being watched while exploring the interior. Most historians attribute these accounts to the island's challenging environment, exhaustion, and the psychological strain of dangerous expeditions. Yet around campfires, another explanation emerged. Locals and sailors whispered that the treasure had become cursed, not by ancient magic, but by the greed that surrounded it. Every person who sought it became consumed by obsession until the pursuit itself destroyed them. Could the greatest danger on Cocos Island have never been hidden traps or hostile terrain, but the irresistible promise of unimaginable wealth? Modern archaeologists approach the legend with far greater caution. Some researchers argue that if the Treasure of Lima existed, it was likely divided, moved, or recovered long ago. Others believe only portions of the legendary fortune were ever buried. Despite sophisticated mapping equipment, satellite imagery, and ground-penetrating technology, no expedition has produced conclusive evidence that billions in treasure remain hidden on the island. Yet the mystery refuses to disappear. Every few years, another explorer announces a promising lead, another map surfaces from a forgotten archive, or another theory captures headlines around the world. Hope, it seems, is the one treasure no search ever exhausts. Perhaps that is why the Treasure of Lima continues to fascinate us. It represents more than lost gold. It embodies humanity's eternal belief that one final discovery can change everything. Generation after generation has arrived convinced they would succeed where everyone else had failed. Instead, they became part of the legend themselves, leaving behind abandoned camps, faded journals, and unanswered questions scattered across the island. Somewhere beneath the dense jungle, there may be nothing more than rock and roots. Or perhaps history's greatest hidden fortune still waits patiently beneath the soil, untouched since the age of sail. As darkness settles over Cocos Island and the Pacific surf crashes against its volcanic cliffs, the rainforest grows strangely quiet. Mist curls through the ancient trees, while abandoned trails disappear into shadow. Somewhere beyond the last visible path, the legend of the Treasure of Lima still whispers to anyone willing to listen. Maybe the gold is gone. Maybe it was never there at all. Or perhaps the island has guarded its secrets so well that no one has ever truly come close. Until someone places undeniable proof before the world, one haunting question will remain. Is the greatest treasure in history still hidden beneath that lonely jungle? Or has the true curse always been the endless search itself?